I want to talk a little bit about this upcoming NBA season.
Let's do it.
And Kirk has some hot takes that he wanted to throw out there. I'm not going to be the guy to challenge him on these takes because he came on Circles Off last year before NBA season, gave out 3 hot takes.
And they were disastrous.
And I couldn't challenge him on them at all. I was just like, all right, I'll take this guy's word for it. You know, he bets NBA seriously. But I would be interested in your response to some of his hot takes.
So these are hot takes. I wouldn't say all of them necessarily have markets. And I wouldn't say I think these are more likely to happen than not, but I would say I'm closer to these hot takes than the market would be. Like, there's not necessarily a price on it, but you could conceptualize a price based on other prices. So let me hit you with a few of them. First one, the Wizards will have the worst record or win percentage in NBA history.
Ooh. It's a hot take, and it's hard to say, like, oh, I agree that they'll set the record for fewest wins, but like I agree with you more than I directionally agree with you. They're a terrible team. We've talked about this offline. Like they're really bad. I side with you directionally.
All right, good to hear. That's a good start. Also,
looking for market agreement.
Exactly.
He's a CLV truther, and this is his version.
This is podcast CLV. Yeah, and every preseason game, it gets worse and worse. This team's unbelievably bad. All right, this one's a hot take, and really there probably is a market for it. I don't think we've talked about either of these teams offline. The Brooklyn Nets should have a higher win total than the Chicago Bulls.
I'm gonna say disagree for 2 reasons. Yes, the Bulls are signaling that they're tanking, but like they have tried harder every year for the last 6 years. The Nets have openly admitted they're rebuilding. I think if you plugged it into like an objective player for player model, I think it's close. But I think the Nets are more likely to trade DFS and Cam Johnson than the Bulls are to like who realistically is going to trade for Vooch, who's like motivated to do so and going to take on that contract and give up the assets. Like maybe Levine's gone, but like and then I think. Yeah, I think directionally agree that it should be closer than the prices currently are, but no, I don't think the Nets should have a higher win total than the Bulls.
I think that actually is a really good point. Of the Nets have players that other teams want, versus the Bulls have players that are nearly untradeable. But yeah, roster for roster to start the season, it's definitely pretty close. The Nets honestly might be better. But I think that's a fair point. They're also lined 9 wins away from each other, so it's definitely pretty. It's a pretty hot take. But I think I think the Bulls are going to tank very hard to end this year. I think Caruso for Giddey plus letting DeRozan walk for nothing is enough signal that they're going to really tank.
So I think one thing that I'll say is like in MLB you can just put together you can get a player rating model. And it should come pretty close to evaluating how good that team is. But for basketball, like fit is a huge part of things, which I think you would agree with. And like
absolutely,
for the last 2 years, I thought the Nets have had incredibly good players. Like DFS is an incredibly valuable player, Royce O'Neal, Mikal Bridges, but they've never had like it's just a bunch of like role players, and they've never had like the offensive hub. So like they've always underperformed their player ratings added together. If that makes sense.
I would agree with that, but I would also say this Bulls team specifically fits pretty terribly together, considering they have the least amount of positive defensive players on really any roster I can ever think of.
Yep. So we're kind of 2 for 2. We're like 1.5 for 2 because I agree directionally with the first one, and I kind of agree directionally with the second one too. They shouldn't be 9 wins off.
Nice. All right. I think these takes keep getting hotter as we go here.
Perfect.
I actually don't know if this one's that hot. Behind Boston and OKC, the Cavs should be listed as the favorite for the most wins in the regular season. Not championship, not playoffs, most regular season wins.
I disagree, but I directionally agree again because I have the Knicks as the answer for this.
Really?
I'm happy. After the hot takes, I'm happy to give out a couple. I came prepared to give out a couple picks of my own after this.
Nice.
Beautiful.
This is not officially sanctioned Keyser NoPlay pick, but I did bet a little Knicks best regular season record.
Interesting. I actually
even
think
above the Celtics and okay.
I directionally disagree with you there. I think I like the Knicks as a team, but they're so shallow post-trade with Mitch Robb injury. So I'm not. I could see them reaching really high highs, but I just think they're going to be too injured to really reach like 55, 60 wins, which they're going to need for that.
I think it's just the Tibbs effect, like, and they're running like a bunch of mega durable players outside of OG. Like every other player that they're running in their rotation is like extremely durable. And I think Tibbs just tries so hard in the regular season. But I don't want to spend too much time on the Knicks. I want to answer your prompt. I directionally agree. I think Kenny Atkinson ball is gonna, they're increasing pace. I don't think Bickerstaff is like particularly good. So like I was high on the Cavs the last 2 years. I actually had Cavs division last year, which they had, and then they purposely tanked on the last day of the season so that they could get a different seed, and I lost a plus 650 that way. So,
yeah.
I
also lost on that bet. Yeah, that was a tough day. All right, I've got 2 more for you. This one's definitely the hottest take.
Okay.
I bet it 25-1 last year. Now we're getting 250. Walker Kessler has a path to Depoy.
Disagree. I disagree. This is the first one I disagree with. Mainly because I don't think that the Utah Jazz have a path to being a good team defense, and there's just never been a time. That's also why, like, I think Wemby's probably the favorite, but he shouldn't be minus money because, like, how can you give a Defensive Player of the Year award to a bad defense? That hasn't happened. Like, I can't remember that happening much.
I don't think it ever has.
Voters will reward that. Like, I love Will Hardy. I don't like his scheme where they just allow a ton of threes. And, like, they shouldn't with Kessler playing a center. They shouldn't need to, but, like, they have thus far. And, like, it's just hard for me to see the Utah Jazz having a good enough defense or Walker Kessler playing enough minutes to get there. I bet a little AD Depoy because I think he's the most talented, a top 3 talented defender in the NBA. And, like, the Lakers under JJ Redick could actually have a good defense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the path for Kessler would be they overperform. They're way better with him off because they're actually starting a decent defensive starting lineup, and then everything past him is terrible. So when he's off, he has crazy on-offs, and maybe it's a weird year for Depoy. Wemby doesn't play enough. All right, last one for you here. The Oklahoma City Thunder should be the favorites to win the NBA title.
Disagree because the Boston Celtics exist, but directionally agree.
What happened? Oh, you're off the Celtics train? Kirk, what the hell's going on here?
Well, they cashed my bet. That was last year. New year, new team.
You against the world.
New year, new team. We're all in on OKC.
If we want to get into it more, from a more technical standpoint, other than the Celtics exist, I think OKC is incredible and could have an incredible defense, but like they don't generate enough 3-point attempts. They are just kind of weirdly constructed where they have like a lot of interchangeable pieces, but like I guess like there are paths where outside of Shea, the rest of their offensive efficiency could go down with more volume because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen them be pushed to those kinds of limits. And like there's also the size aspect if Hartenstein's not out there or the weird fit if he is out there with Chet. So I have tickets. The minute Caruso got traded, because I think Caruso might be the most underrated player in the NBA.
Agreed.
I ran to go take OKC chip futures because there were no Western Conference bets available to me, knowing that I could just hedge out of them if OKC gets there. So like directionally agree, it's just the Celtics exist.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think an argument for OKC is they are the most asset-rich team in the NBA and could pretty easily add an offensive player if one comes available.
They haven't.
Yeah, that's fair. My spicy maybe could happen take is Kawhi for their picks back. Could happen.
My dream has every year has been Markkanen to the Thunder.
Yeah, that's a perfect fit as well.
Right.
Oh, we got some directional agreement, some directional disagreement, and a straight disagreement as well.
It's funny because when we text, Keyser disagrees with me way more than on the pod.
Yeah.
He
doesn't want to show you up on the pod.
No. He brought out the good takes for the show, I guess.
The texts are only the bad takes.
Yeah. Is it cool if I give out 2 picks?
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely. If Johnny was here, he'd be asking you for more than 2 picks. So just go for it.
Okay, obviously, we're recording and it's going to go out on Thursday, so these are both futures. The first one is Toronto Raptors under 30.5 wins. I think current prices now, you'd have to find like a minus 125, but I think it's also fine at 29.5. Disclaimer that I've kind of strayed away from futures over the last few, like more recently, I've strayed away from futures just because, especially for regular season win totals, I'm not interested in tying up my bankroll for 7 months or whatever for a minus 115 payout. It would have to be like a banker where I think it's like mega ROI, and I do think this is the case. The Raptors won 25 games last year. They traded everybody, and post-trade deadline, the last 27 games, basically the last third of the season, they went 3-24. They did tank egregiously in that they would often sub in a bad unit for parts of the fourth quarter when they're in it. So I'm not saying that they weren't tanking, but like outside of Scotty Barnes and Jakob Poeltl, who was hurt, like they didn't tank that much in terms of like many games in that 3-24 stretch. They started the best players that they had available to them.
Yeah.
They were just bad, and like their rotation is very, very shallow. They're playing so many players that are like among the worst players in the NBA, and then on top of that, we have like their GM and their starting center acknowledge openly in an anti-tanking world that they are deliberately tanking this year. Even with the East having a bunch of like fellow tankers, like it would be a disaster of a season if they are targeting to tank and they win 31 games. Like that seems hard to do if that's what they're trying to do. Emmanuel Quickly is fine, but he's probably bottom 10 starting point guard. Just it's a deep point guard, starting class, but like he's bottom 10 probably. RJ Barrett has had 2 months of showing he's an efficient player. Scotty Barnes is good, but his jumper that he found last year was good to start the year, and then it regressed by the end of the year back to what old Scotty Barnes' jumper looks like. I just fail to see how they're going to achieve their team objective if they win 31 games. And kind of like I think Kirk originally disagreed and then maybe has come around to agree on this, because when I said this originally, he's like, I don't like that. Like Charlotte is 30.5. I think my friends and I joke that Charlotte's a championship roster. They're not, but they're a really good roster. They're much more talented than Toronto lined at the same. So that's my first pick. Do you have any thoughts?
Charlotte's a championship roster is an egregious take, but I agree with you. I agree with you otherwise.
Do you directionally agree though?
Yeah, no. The Raptors stink. I think Grady Dick might be the worst starting player in the league to start the year. Yeah, and also we're starting the year with RJ and Quickly hurt. It's an amazing bet. I totally agree.
I like how you said we as if you're part of the organization as well. Classic
Toronto.
Classic Toronto right there. Yeah, it sucks. Listen, I mean, I want to watch the Raptors be competitive, but there's not a lot of excitement brewing in the city for this season.
But it's better for us to win 20 games than 35. So I don't hate it.
Right. The other one I had is a coach of the year future. It's Mike Budenholzer, coach of the year. I bet it at 22-1. I checked today. I think 20-1 is still available on DraftKings and FanDuel, I believe. I would play it down to like 14 or 15-1, which should be everywhere. Basically, like I think to win one of these awards, you want both a reason that they could win and sort of the narrative behind it that the voters seem to love. He's an elite regular season coach. He was fired in his last playoff series against the Heat because his brain malfunctioned, but his brother had just passed away that week. And, I think most people respect Bud as a coach. And then you see sort of like, it helps that it juxtaposes that the coaches that came in after him were pretty bad. So like all Bucks fans want Budenholzer back because they've had a lot worse since. And like he was carrying them to easy 1 seeds every year without really even taxing his starters' minutes. He goes to Phoenix, sort of like the third coach in 3 years, fixing the unfixable team if he can do it. He already knows about the math problem. He has them shooting more threes in the preseason, a lot more threes. Tyus Jones is a really underrated addition that I don't think, like, if they go 1 seed in the West this year, I do think people will mention Tyus Jones, but I think a lot of people will mention like Mike Budenholzer as the main reason, especially if they change up their play style. I also think it's kind of like revenge season for Kevin Durant. Like I think he's kind of has a chip on his shoulder this year. I think Bradley Beal is kind of set up for success this year. I really like his play. I looked into Suns futures, but they're the favorite. I was going to bet their division, but they're the favorites. I kind of, as they should be. I think they're going to take the regular season seriously. And Budenholzer has shown himself to be an elite regular season coach. So I think he should be one of the favorites.
All right. Yeah. I did check to see that it exists.
Agree.
No, absolutely agree. One of my hot takes that was left on the chopping block was the Phoenix Suns end up with the number one offense this year. So, no, I totally agree. I actually was looking at Suns championship futures today, but it steamed a bunch, but I just totally agree with you.